The Galactic Council chamber was silent. The air was thick with tension as diplomats and military leaders from various species stared at the holographic display in front of them. It showed Earth, a blue and green planet, vibrant with life. A planet with no visible defense grid, no orbital cannons, no planetary shield, no warships constantly patrolling its orbit. It was an open invitation for conquest. Admiral Xalvar of the Krellan Dominion tapped his clawed fingers against the table. "This is madness," he growled. "Every major civilization has planetary defenses. Even minor colonies have shield generators. But Earth? Nothing. How do they survive?" The council members exchanged uneasy glances. It was a question that had lingered for years, yet no one had dared to ask directly. The humans were part of the Galactic Federation, but they remained an enigma. Friendly, yet dangerous. Intelligent, yet unpredictable. They had fought wars in the past, but no one had seen the full extent of their military power. The Zorveni ambassador, a tall, silver-skinned being with deep black eyes, finally spoke. "There is only one way to find out. We must ask them." A mission was quickly organized. A delegation of high-ranking officials was sent to Earth to meet with its leaders. They traveled in a Grand Federation vessel, arriving in Earth's orbit within days. The planet was peaceful, its cities shining below. But there was something unsettling about that very peace. The human delegation greeted them with polite smiles, leading them into a large conference room in Geneva, Earth's political hub. The leader of the human delegation was General Alexander Grayson, an older man with sharp eyes that seemed to see through every deception. The Zorveni ambassador wasted no time. "General, forgive our curiosity, but we must ask, why does Earth have no defense grid?" For a moment, Grayson said nothing. Then he chuckled. "You think we need one?" The delegation was confused. "Every civilized world has defenses," Admiral Xalvar insisted. "Shields, orbital cannons, planetary fleets. But you have nothing. Are you not afraid of attack?" Grayson leaned back in his chair, folding his hands. "Afraid? No. But let me ask you something. How many planets with defense grids have been conquered in the last century?" Silence. Everyone in the room knew the answer. Many. Defense grids could be breached. Shields could be overwhelmed. Fleets could be outnumbered. Grayson continued. "And tell me, how many times has Earth been invaded?" More silence. The answer was clear. Never. The delegation shifted uneasily. "That does not explain your strategy," the Zorveni ambassador pressed. "How do you protect your world?" Grayson smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "We don't wait for the fight to come to us. If someone tries to invade Earth, they'll never reach it. We handle threats before they become threats." The room felt colder. The aliens realized what he meant. Earth didn't need a defense grid because no enemy would survive long enough to attack it. Admiral Xalvar narrowed his eyes. "Are you saying you rely purely on offense?" Grayson shrugged. "Call it what you want. We call it survival." The Zorveni ambassador hesitated. "And if, hypothetically, someone did attack Earth?" Grayson's smile disappeared. He leaned forward, his voice calm but filled with an undeniable edge. "Then we will erase them." The weight of those words settled over the room. The aliens had expected an explanation of advanced cloak defenses, secret weapons, or hidden fleets. Instead, they had received a chilling truth. Earth's defense was not defense at all. It was the promise of total annihilation for anyone foolish enough to strike first. As the meeting ended, the alien delegation left with more questions than answers. But one thing was clear. Earth's lack of defenses was not a weakness. It was a warning. And for the first time, the galaxy began to fear what would happen if someone ignored that warning. The delegation's ship left Earth's atmosphere in silence. None of the alien officials spoke as they watched the blue planet shrink behind them. They had come looking for answers, but what they had found instead was something far more unsettling. Admiral Xalvar sat in the command seat of the ship's bridge, his claws tapping against the armrest. His reptilian eyes remained fixed on the holographic projection of Earth. "They have no planetary defenses, no shields, no orbital cannons," he muttered. "And yet they act as if no one dares to attack them." The Zorveni ambassador sat beside him, her silver-skinned fingers clasped together. "Because no one does," she whispered. "And now we know why." The ship's navigation officer, a young Krellin lieutenant, cleared his throat. "Sir, if I may, do you think they're bluffing?" Zalvar turned his gaze toward the lieutenant. "Do you truly believe that?" The young officer hesitated. "No, but it doesn't make sense. A race that does not defend itself is either supremely arrogant or dangerously confident. The humans must have some hidden weapon, some secret fleet." The ambassador shook her head. "No, that human general, Grayson, he wasn't boasting. He wasn't trying to intimidate us. He was simply stating a fact. They do not defend. They eliminate." The silence on the bridge grew heavier. Every species in the Federation followed the same logic. Defense was survival. Shields, fleets, automated turrets. Every world was a fortress. It was the natural way of things. But Earth had abandoned that principle entirely. Admiral Zalvar exhaled slowly. "The humans have always been different. We thought their kindness was a weakness. We assumed their diplomacy meant they feared war." His claws scraped against the metal armrest. "But what if we were wrong?" The ship continued its journey back to the Galactic Federation's capital. When they arrived, the delegation wasted no time in reporting their findings. A special council meeting was called, attended by representatives from all major species. The chamber was filled with murmurs as holographic images of Earth were displayed in the center of the room. "They are completely undefended," one of the council members stated. "They have no planetary grid, no orbital station defenses. If war were to break out, Earth would fall within days." Admiral Zalvar's voice cut through the noise. "That is what we assumed. But the truth is far more terrifying. Earth does not prepare for war. They are war." The murmurs stopped. Zalvar continued, his voice steady. "They do not build walls because they do not expect to be attacked. They do not construct shields because they do not plan to be on the defensive. Their strategy is clear. If an enemy rises, humanity does not wait. They strike first. They end the threat before it can reach them." A council member scoffed. "This is absurd. Are you suggesting that Earth is invincible? That their arrogance protects them?" The Zorveni ambassador finally spoke, her voice quiet but firm. "Not invincible, just untouchable." The room fell silent again. Another ambassador, this one from the Vrax Dominion, looked skeptical. "And if we tested this theory?" Zalvar turned his reptilian eyes toward the Vraxian. "Then I suggest you prepare your species for extinction." The weight of his words settled over the council. The Vraxian scoffed but said nothing more. The Zorveni ambassador leaned forward. "We must consider the implications. Earth does not see war the way we do. They do not believe in balance. They do not fight to conquer or negotiate. They fight to end wars, not participate in them." Another council member shook his head. "It is reckless. Their entire strategy is built on absolute retaliation. If they ever feel truly threatened, they won't just defeat their enemy. They will erase them." For the first time in centuries, fear crept into the hearts of the Galactic Federation's leaders. They had always seen Earth as a peculiar, relatively young race, useful, innovative, but ultimately unthreatening. Now, they realized the truth. Humanity was the quiet predator in a galaxy of prey. And for the first time, the Federation faced the horrifying question: what happens if someone makes the mistake of pushing Earth too far? The Galactic Council chamber was silent. The weight of the revelations about Earth hung over the gathered representatives like a storm cloud. The idea of a planet with no defenses, no shields, and no planetary weapons had seemed laughable at first. Now, it was terrifying. Humanity was not weak. They were simply different, and their difference made them the Admiral Xalvar stood at the center of the chamber, his scaly features tense. He had seen war before. He had commanded fleets, watched planets burn, and signed peace treaties that barely lasted a generation. But never had he encountered a species that had no interest in either conquest or defense, only in eliminating threats before they could rise. The question we must ask ourselves, Xalvar said, his deep voice breaking the uneasy silence, is how much longer we can afford to remain ignorant of what humanity is truly capable of. The Zorvani ambassador nodded. The humans did not threaten us. They did not boast. But that is precisely what makes them so terrifying. Their lack of fear is not arrogance, it is certainty. Murmurs rippled through the council. Some nodded in agreement, while others still refused to believe. The Vraxian delegate, always one to seek dominance, leaned forward with narrowed eyes. Then why, he asked, has no one challenged them? Why has no war been waged against humanity? A silence followed. Xalvar's claws tapped against the table, because the few who did no longer exist. The room tensed. The council chamber's massive holographic display flickered, and an old classified battle report appeared. The logo of the Galactic Intelligence Network flashed for a moment before the report opened. Images of shattered fleets, destroyed warships, and planets left as lifeless husks filled the air. The species that had dared to test Earth's resolve were not just defeated, they were erased. This, Xalvar said, his voice heavy, is what happened to the Draknar Empire 2 centuries ago. They were a warrior species, far older and more advanced than humanity. When Earth first joined the galactic community, the Draknar saw them as weak, easy to conquer. They struck first. The images shifted. The Draknar homeworld, once a lush, thriving planet, was now nothing but a scorched wasteland. The war lasted precisely 27 days. Xalvar's voice was grim. The Draknar sent 3 fleets to Earth. None returned. Humanity did not negotiate. They did not seek peace. They hunted every last Draknar warship, tracked every base, and when it was over, the Draknar ceased to exist. The Vraxian delegate scoffed, but there was an uneasy flicker in his eyes. A coincidence. Perhaps the Draknar underestimated them. The Zorveni ambassador's voice was almost a whisper. No one underestimates humanity twice. Another council member, a high-ranking official from the Kelrith species, folded his 3 arms across his chest. You're suggesting that humanity's lack of planetary defenses is not because they are weak, but because they know that anyone foolish enough to attack them will be destroyed before they can even land a force. Xalvar nodded. They do not build shields because they do not intend to take damage. They do not construct planetary defenses because no battle will ever reach their surface. If war comes to them, they will not defend. They will end it. The weight of his words pressed upon the chamber. Some of the younger delegates looked pale. Even the most war-hardened species exchanged uneasy glances. The idea of an enemy that never played defense, that never allowed war to drag on, was something they could not comprehend. The Vraxian delegate clenched his fists. Then we have only one option, he said through gritted teeth. We must learn their secret. We must uncover whatever hidden technology or strategy they are using. If we do not, Earth will remain a mystery, an unpredictable force capable of wiping out entire civilizations. That is unacceptable. The Zorveni ambassador turned to him, her expression unreadable. And what will you do once you have this knowledge? Use it against them. The Vraxian hesitated. Xalvar sighed. If you do, you will not survive the attempt. He turned to the council as a whole. The Federation has survived for thousands of years because we have maintained a balance. Every species has its strengths and weaknesses. Every war has its limits. But Earth does not play by our rules. They do not seek war, but they do not fear it either. And that is why we must never make the mistake of thinking them weak. A heavy silence filled the chamber. For the first time in the history of the Galactic Federation, The most powerful empires in the universe found themselves united in a singular chilling realization. Earth did not need defenses, because by the time anyone attacked them, it was already too late. And the galaxy had just begun to understand why. The Galactic Council had faced many crises before: wars, invasions, even the collapse of entire civilizations. But never had they encountered a situation where fear did not stem from an active threat, but from the unknown. Earth had no planetary defense grid, no orbital fortresses, no shield networks. By all logical accounts, it was exposed, vulnerable, an easy target for conquest. And yet, no one dared to attack. Admiral Xalvar, a veteran of countless battles, stared at the massive star map projected in the center of the council chamber. It displayed every known faction in the galaxy, their military strengths, their strategic positions. Earth, located near the galactic outer rim, was surrounded by powerful species, some allies, some opportunists looking for the first sign of weakness. He clenched his jaw. If Earth was truly defenseless, then why had no one even attempted to invade? He turned to the lead strategist of the Kelrith Empire, General Jalak, a towering creature with hardened metallic skin and 4 piercing eyes. "Tell me, General," Xalvar asked, his voice careful, "if Earth has no defenses, no shield network, no planetary weapons, why have we not seen a single invasion attempt?" Jalak's expression darkened. "Because those who have tried are gone." A murmur spread through the chamber. Some of the newer council members exchanged nervous glances, but Xalvar pressed forward. "Explain." Jalak waved his clawed hand, and the holographic map shifted. It zoomed in on a region of space near Earth's borders, what was once controlled by the Centaur Dominion, an aggressive, war-hardened species that had, a century ago, been on the path to empire building. Now, their systems were dark, dead. The Centaur Dominion, Jalak continued, was a powerful military force. 100 years ago, they launched an attack on Earth. They believed humanity to be weak, ripe for conquest. No one in the council thought much of it. The Centaur had conquered dozens of worlds before. Their victory seemed certain. Xalvar narrowed his eyes. And yet, the Dominion no longer exists. Jalak nodded grimly. "Correct. Their invasion force entered human space." He motioned, and the hologram displayed records of the Centaur fleet, hundreds of warships, dreadnoughts, and planetary siege craft, an overwhelming force. This was their fleet before entering Earth's sector. The image flickered. Now, only debris remained. This was their fleet after. The room was deathly silent. One of the younger council members gulped. What happened to them?" Jalak turned toward Xalvar. "That is the question we've never been able to answer. The Centaur never sent a distress signal. They never called for reinforcements. They never even attempted to retreat. One moment, they were advancing. The next, nothing. Every single warship was destroyed, and their homeworld was left defenseless. Within months, their civilization collapsed." Xalvar's claws tapped against the table. "Are you suggesting that Earth has a hidden weapon? Something capable of wiping out entire fleets without warning?" Jalak hesitated. "We do not know. Our spies have scored their technology. Their military assets do not match such a capability. But the Centaur invasion is not the only example." He waved his hand again, and another image appeared. This time, it was the remnants of the Varishi Rebellion, a brutal pirate faction that had, decades ago, raided the fringes of galactic space. At their height, they had the strength of a minor empire, striking at trade routes and terrorizing weaker colonies. "They made the mistake of targeting an Earth colony," Jalak said. The aftermath was clear. Where once there had been fleets of pirate ships, now there was nothing but silence. No distress calls. No survivors. They raided a human settlement and disappeared. Not a single trace of them remained. A chilling realization began to settle over the council. The pattern was undeniable. Those who moved against Earth did not simply lose. They vanished. The Vraxian delegate, always one to posture, leaned forward with a skeptical glare. This is all speculation. You have no proof that Earth is responsible. Jalak gave him a sharp look. Do you really believe in coincidences of this scale? Zalvar took a deep breath. Then the true question remains. If Earth possesses such overwhelming power, why have they not expanded? Why do they not use it to claim territory, to enforce dominance? It was the question that had haunted him for years. Power was always followed by ambition. Yet Earth did not act like conquerors. They did not expand their reach, did not demand submission. They simply waited. The Zorveni ambassador, silent until now, finally spoke, her voice steady but laced with unease. Because they do not need to. Their strategy is unlike any other species. They do not fight for territory. They fight to eliminate threats before they escalate. A heavy pause followed her words. The Vraxian delegate's confidence wavered. You mean to say? She nodded. They do not seek war. But if war comes, they do not just win. They erase their enemies. A deep, sinking feeling settled in Zalvar's chest. He had spent his life studying warfare, learning how species waged battle. But never had he encountered one that operated in complete silence, striking only when necessary, and making sure their enemies could never rise again. For the first time, the Galactic Council began to understand the true nature of Earth's strength. And for the first time, they truly feared what humanity could do. The Galactic Council chamber had never been this quiet. Even in times of war, when empires clashed and civilizations burned, there was always strategy, always a plan, an understanding of how the conflict could be managed. But now, they faced something they did not understand. Admiral Zalvar leaned forward, his claws tapping against the polished table. The evidence was undeniable. Every species that had attacked Earth had vanished. No survivors, no distress signals, just silence. It wasn't a war, it was a purge. He turned to General Jalak, the Kelrith war strategist who had just finished outlining the chilling fate of the Centaur Dominion and the Varishi Rebellion. You've shown us what happens to those who strike at Earth, Zalvar said. But there's still one question left unanswered. If humanity is this powerful, why have they not conquered the stars? Why do they not rule over us all? Jalak was silent for a moment. Then, in a voice lower than before, he said, because they do not want to. The words sent a chill through the room. Ambassador Vrex of the Vraxian Empire, known for his arrogance, scoffed. Ridiculous. No species simply chooses to remain weak when they hold such power. He pointed a clawed finger at the holographic display of Earth. What do they gain from staying passive? From letting threats exist when they could wipe them out? Jalak's piercing gaze met his. They gain peace. Vrex frowned, but Jalak continued. Unlike us, humanity does not expand for the sake of expansion. They do not seek control. They do not seek to rule over others. Their entire strategy is built on one terrifying concept. They only fight when they have to. Zalvar felt the weight of those words settle deep in his gut. They only fight when they have to. That explained everything. It explained why Earth had no defense grid, why they did not launch preemptive strikes, why they did not interfere in the wars of other species. Because humanity was waiting, watching, letting the galaxy think they were weak. And when someone made the mistake of attacking them, Earth responded in a way that left only silence behind. Vrex shook his head. No, I refuse to believe this. If they had the strength to erase entire fleets, entire species, then there would be records of survivors, deserters, something. Jalak exhaled slowly. There was one. The chamber went still. Zalvar narrowed his eyes. A survivor. Jalak nodded. Many years ago, before the Centaur fell, one of their captains managed to send a single transmission before vanishing. He pressed a control on his wrist, and the room filled with a distorted, crackling audio file. A voice, warped with static, but still filled with sheer, unfiltered terror, echoed through the chamber. The Galactic Council had always believed that war was a game of numbers, technology, and grand strategies. Empires that spanned star systems measured their strength in fleets, firepower, and planetary defenses. For centuries, this belief had held true, until they provoked Earth. Admiral Xalvar stood on the bridge of his command ship, his scales rippling with unease. The Kelrith fleet, once one of the most feared forces in the galaxy, was now nothing more than a scattered, panicked mess. Their ships drifted, some powerless, some reduced to nothing more than burning wrecks. The silence of deep space was broken only by the desperate cries of surviving captains over the communication channels. They came out of nowhere. They don't move like us. The signal was cut off. Xalvar clenched his jaw. That had been the 5th distress call to go silent in the last 10 minutes. Every attempt to regroup, every counteroffensive, had ended the same way. He turned to his second-in-command, a younger officer named Valak, who had gone deathly still. "Tell me what we're dealing with," Xalvar ordered, keeping his voice steady. Valak hesitated before responding. "It's not a fleet, sir. It's something else." Xalvar narrowed his eyes. "What do you mean?" Valak swallowed hard. "The humans. They're inside our ships." For the first time in decades, Xalvar felt true fear. "Impossible." Valak gestured to the screen. Live security feeds from multiple Kelrith ships played before them. Each one showed the same thing. Shadowy figures moving through hallways, faster than any organic should. Kelrith soldiers, the best in the Empire, were being cut down before they could even react. Xalvar leaned in closer, analyzing the footage. It didn't make sense. Humans should not have been able to board this many ships this quickly. The battle had barely begun. Their defensive shields should have stopped any infiltration attempts, but the evidence was undeniable. They had already lost. Valak spoke again, his voice barely above a whisper. "Sir, these aren't normal soldiers. They don't hesitate. They don't show mercy. They aren't killing for victory. They're eliminating us like pests." Xalvar gritted his teeth. "How?" "We don't know." Valak's hands trembled. "They don't communicate with each other. They don't make a sound. They just appear, kill, and move on. We never even detected their ships entering the system." Xalvar turned to the tactical officer. "Scan for cloaked vessels. There must be stealth ships we missed." The officer's face was pale. "Sir, there are no ships." The word sent a chill through Xalvar's body. No ships. Then how were the humans here? His thoughts were interrupted by a chilling sound. A message had just been received, audio only. The bridge crew went silent as the transmission began to play. A low, distorted voice filled the room. "You took mercy for weakness. You believed kindness was cowardice. You thought we had no defenses, because you could not see them." The voice was not mechanical. It was human. A horrifying realization gripped Xalvar. This was never a battle. This was a trap. Humans had let the Kelrith believe they were defenseless. They had let them attack, luring them into false confidence. And now, the trap had closed. The voice spoke again. "You asked why Earth had no defense grid. The answer is simple." A faint rustling sound echoed over the transmission, like the movement of unseen figures. Then the voice continued, colder than before. "We don't need one." Then, silence. The ship's emergency alarms blared. Xalvar turned to see his officers frantically typing at their consoles. "Report," he barked. Valak's voice cracked with panic. "They're inside the ship, sir. They're already here." Xalvar's blood turned to ice. The bridge doors suddenly flickered as the power dimmed. The lights failed for a fraction of a second, and in that instant, he saw them. Dark figures standing in the doorway. They did not raise weapons. They did not need to. Zalvar had spent his entire career waging war, believing in tactics and strength. But nothing had prepared him for this. The humans weren't fighting. They were hunting. And he had just realized it too late. Admiral Zalvar had always believed that war was a matter of control. Control over forces, control over resources, control over the battlefield itself. But as he stood on the darkened bridge of his once mighty warship, he realized that he had lost all control. The shadows moved. He could feel them, though his eyes couldn't see them. His soldiers, the best-trained warriors of the Kelrith Empire, were frozen in terror, weapons trembling in their hands. The enemy was inside. Not just inside the ship, but inside their minds. Fear had taken root, and it would not let go. "Sir," Valak's voice was barely more than a whisper. What do we do?" Zalvar had no answer. The emergency lights flickered. The ship's systems had been hijacked, twisted to the enemy's will. Communications were jammed. Every attempt to send a distress signal had been met with silence. They were alone. No, not alone. They were surrounded. The humans had no warships in orbit, no defense grid, no great fleets, and yet they had won this war without firing a single planetary weapon. They had let the Kelrith think Earth was weak. They had let them come. And now, one by one, the Kelrith forces were vanishing into the abyss. A sudden movement in the darkness made Zalvar turn. A single human stood before him. No armor, no weapons, just a figure clad in black, eyes cold and calculating. There was no rage in that gaze, no satisfaction, no triumph, just purpose. The soldier raised a small device, pressing it without hesitation. The ship's main screen flickered to life, and a new transmission played. It was the last thing the Kelrith would ever hear. Final transmission. Origin. Earth. The Galactic Council once asked why Earth had no defense grid. You assumed it was because we were weak. Because we could not fight. Because we were helpless against the great powers of the galaxy. You believed that because you saw no weapons, we had none. Because you saw no fleet, we had none. Because you saw no army, we had none. You failed to ask the right question. The question was never, why doesn't Earth have defenses? The question was, what happens when Earth stops holding back? And now, you have your answer. The message ended. Admiral Zalvar felt the weight of those words settle on his chest. His throat went dry as he looked at the human standing before him. This is a war crime," he whispered. The human tilted their head slightly, as if considering the statement. Then they spoke, voice calm, unshaken. "No." A flick of their wrist. The lights went out completely. Zalvar never saw what happened next. He only heard the screams. The Kelrith fleet, once a symbol of galactic power, was no more. The galaxy would never look at Earth the same way again. And those who survived this nightmare would carry a message to the stars, a warning that would never be forgotten. Never mistake Earth's mercy for weakness. Because when humanity decided to fight, it was already too late.